In this video, I am going to rank all 13 villains in Christopher Nolan movie, and surprisingly, that might be the worst of the worst and the best of the best villain ever in this list.
Spot Gotham 11 minutes.
Dark Knight Rises has a perfectly compelling villain already in Tom Hardy Bane, who worked well as a counterpart to Batman in the story. It's Bane who defeated and banished Batman, ransacked Brooklyn Armory, and put Gotham City under a pall of fear. Wade returned to the city, and Revival is motivated by his drive to save the city and take down Bane in their final class. When it is revealed in the final plot twist that the real villains behind the scenes were Talia, honestly, the film really didn't need Talia. Fans alone were easily able to carry the movie, and I don't even remember her name. She seemed invincible for about 2/3 of the movie. Topping it all up, it has infamously terrible death scene. I know Nolan's one Talia were the most personal villains, but Bruce Wayne never reflects of himself if he falls into darkness in the Dark Knight trilogy, but it wasn't executed in the right way.
You're feeling it, aren't you? A survival instinct.
Dr. Mans is in an odd place in the lineup of Nolan's villains. He is a decent villain in his own right, and does an admirable job of replacing the theme of human self-interest and the flaw of display faith in abstract scientific calculation. I am honestly really impressed with the actor because Matt Damon is culturally feels a good guy in the movie. Honestly, I empathize with him. In a similar situation, I might have done the same myself. Despite all that, somehow he still comes up as a glorified extra in the movie. The film itself had a compelling plot about human survival, and the struggle involved is before Dr. Mans were introduced, and ultimately not too much is lost from the drama of the movie. If he cuts out it, he makes an interesting impact in his limited capacity and accelerate the climax of the movie, but he is not a villain so central to the movie that he is irreplaceable.
You don't negotiate with a tiger. You admire a tiger.
Andre says that he remains with ambition and vision, rarely encountering obstacles and always achieving his desire. This behavior is more evident in how he treats his wife Catherine, who he mentally and physically abused and relentlessly. This attitude extended to work at law, with Caesar eventually deciding to destroy the work with him when he found out that he was dying. While he is dying, this fueled his desire to kill everyone along with himself, which doesn't make him sympathetic. Furthermore, he's like a silly villain in a supposedly serious movie. He is a Russian oligarch with no redeeming quality, making him feel more like a blood joke than an active character. To make him more worse, Sato even explained the entirety of his plan to the hero like the best Bond movie, saying things that feel pulled straight from a villain's handbook to the white line.
You want my opinion? You need to lighten up.
So before become a gangster, inland smoking and calling family missing, or even before inventing nuclear bomb, he is a former psychiatrist at Arkham Asylum who is secretly working with Ra's al Ghul and mob boss Carmine Falcon. They bring shipment of drugs in for him to use to raise his fear toxin, which he later sell as drugs to criminal. Batman first met Nemesis the Scarecrow is genuinely frightening with some outstanding fear. The first scene where he do the Scarecrow mask is perfect encapsulation of this. The initially quiet, bespectacled Murphy slowly slide into slightly creepy territory, and the audience said that something strange is foot before it becomes instantly terrifying by introducing a key element of plot of the movie. One thing that detracts from his overall success, however, is that he ultimately overshadowed by the end by the other villains of the movie. I feel like his role in The Dark Knight was sort of just like random street level villains, when he is so much more than that in all his other appearances in the trilogy.
No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
The best villains of The Dark Knight Rises is the one who really should have been the focus of attention the entire time. Hardy Bane pushed Batman to the limits by acting as sort of in between. Everything that Bruce Wayne had learned to do, Bane can do better. The confrontation underground so Bane power, and he used darkness against Batman who rely on it. Bane punished Wayne for his arrogance and underestimating him. The somewhat disappointing reveal that Talia was in fact the mastermind behind all Bane action, holding back from taking the top spot in our list. Up until the Talia twist, Bane was honestly a great villain, and Tom Hardy nailed the role. Bane, the main villain of this movie, was killed in a split second. Everything was question about him. That's it. It's like the scriptwriter wants this movie to end quickly as possible at this point. One more problem, Bane thought. I admit I didn't get what he was saying more than half the time, and even then I had to strain really hard. It was just awful.
Every time a civilization reaches the pinnacle of its decadence, we return to restore the balance.
In a survival twist that worked much more effectively than that of Talia, Liam Neeson's Brass Ghul was an excellent counterpart to Bruce in the origin story of Batman. Whilst were a later film, Neeson's character made a perfect opponent for Batman to overcome in the first film. The man who taught him everything he knows about fighting is the one he must surpass in order to establish who he really is as a hero. For how great the Joker and Bane's are in these trilogies, it's just a Ghul that gets overlooked the most. He is truly terrifying how he entire villains that believe what he's doing is actually good for people, and he's not a typical trust your mustache evil villain. That's what the films and the trilogy did so well. It gave layers to its character and it made part the more intelligent superhero franchise. There was no hope for redemption in his eyes, and he decided that means total destruction was the only solution.
You're waiting for a train.
She was the last wife of Dom Cobb, a fellow film architect who committed suicide, believing she was living in the grave. Despite having died, her memory became prevalent in Dom's subconscious and still haunt him, allowing his projection of her to antagonize him and his group. The villains of Inception work so well because they are elements of the plot concept itself, part of the dreamscape. That's the foundation of the story. Mal is a character in a world between worlds, an integral part of every dream the hero has. See the manifestation of the troubled mind of Leonardo DiCaprio, main character. She plays in and out different roles in the story, depending on the scene. In flashback, she not the villains but the troubled woman losing her grip on reality. In the labyrinth of memory, she is the untroubled counterpart to Cobb. Consequently, she works as both a compelling villain and a tragic, sympathetic character condemned to a half existence in the main troubled memory.
You never understood why we did this.
Andrea doesn't strictly help witness intention behind action in the British, but the more upset he becomes with beating balance, the more dangerous he behaves. When the fight between the two magicians begins, Andrea will stop at nothing to outdo balance illusion. He eventually uses Tesla technology of cloning to convince his audience that he can disappear and reappear when he clones around to death in the process. In that sense, he is a great danger to himself because he effectively murders himself over and over in an attempt to become the richest, but instead he ends up killing himself a whole bunch of times. Considering that his first reaction was to shoot the clones, and the clone's first reaction was to know that and go for the guns. Clearly he couldn't trust himself.
Can't be easy after 3 days of no sleep. Are you seeing things yet?
Finn writes program novels and could easily be a character one of his own story. He killed a girl and knows exactly how to hide the evidence, and on top of that, he doesn't seem bothered at all by what he had done. It's quite disturbing, and he saw later on that he had no problem killing against his and Thomas and fatally shooting one another. Intelligent villains are quite frightening. They can often outsmart their pursuer, while the villains get the upper hands on Detective Will Thomas and blackmail him in order to stay out of trouble. I like the change of tones and found the psychological mind game that we play with Thomas to be very entertaining and somewhat creepy. It's not often that you can say that Al Pacino's and up being our axis, but I really felt that William stole the show. Pacino was still good, but William excelled in his role.
Live to fight another day, officer.
Two-Face is one of the oldest Batman villains that is still around, but Nolan's depiction of him made him as satisfying as ever. Harvey Dent starts out as a good man who wanted to root out the corruption from Gotham, but as he took a negative turn in his life, he became angry and nihilistic. His motives turned from being peers to instead desiring revenge on those who wronged him. Simply by tossing a coin, he decided whether people should live or die. Oftentimes, death won over life. I especially love his grateful hours and dependency on chance to get justice for Rachel and cleanse out Gotham City of criminals. Dance is a very personal villain of Batman. Dance represented the idealistic version of Batman, which doesn't need a case and got gets to clean the city from the criminal. Aaron Eckhart deserves an award for his performance, in my opinion.
This is just how the game is played.
Louis Strauss was a rival of Oppenheimer. This is for several reasons, including a deep-seated grudge where Straw was convinced that Oppenheimer had been turning members of the science community against him, including Albert Einstein. His unforgiving nature and animosity towards Oppenheimer were further fueled by Oppenheimer's humiliation of Straw, Oppenheimer's opposition to hydrogen bomb developments, and the fact they were always at odds politically. Maybe he is not the most sinister villain in 2023, but I love Robert Downey Jr.'s performance along with Straw and Oppenheimer. I think this was his best performance to this day, and you can really see how much he wanted to get it back.
We had no system. If you're gonna make it work.
Why is there a handful of petty throughout who show their petty vices? The true villains wait until the very end of the story for its dramatic street review. As the plot moves forward, however, Leland Selby moves back towards the beginning of the story. When the movement finally comes, the audience find out the truth that has been at the heart of the plot the entire time. Selby already took his vengeance year before, but has no way of moving on with his life. Instead of moving on, then he laid a false chance for himself to follow, knowing full well that he will never remember that he set himself on a wild goose chase. His pursuit of purpose is subverted and thrusted by a villain from the very start, but it is only at the end of the movie that the audience find out that the true villain was Selby himself.
Never start with the head. The victim gets all fuzzy.
Heath Ledger's Joker is easily the most iconic villain on this list, and for good reason. The role that won Ledger his Oscar is other specter compelling villains. He determined, vindictive, sadistic, and inescapably perceptive of all the flaws of human nature and society. He pushed Batman to the limits of his moral resistance, convinced of his own philosophy that everyone is incorruptible and become villains when they are put hard enough. The masterstroke of the hero-villain dynamics in The Dark Knight though is that Batman does not get a simple victory. The thesis of both characters is ruined Christ, and the people of Gotham make a moral stand for the good while the hero Happiness fall and become the villains, forcing Batman into a necessary lie to save the hope of the city. Joker describes himself as an agent of chaos, and it's hard to argue with his assessment. The villains of Memento is another one who waits to make an appearance. Heath Ledger did a phenomenal job in the roles and solidified himself as one of the best Joker actors ever put to the screen. He never seemed to have any grounds of reason for his action other than wreaking havoc on Gotham.